Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the podcast. Today, I want to discuss the very simple practice of what we could call surrender or the pathway of surrender. Surrender can often be misinterpreted or misconstrued as resigning, to be resigned to something, giving up, removing ourselves from something we should be participating in, kind of like a negative sort of sense of failure. You're just like, okay, forget it. I surrender, it's over, whatever. But in this context, the idea of surrendering is more of an internal experience and has nothing to do with whether we take action or we don't take action. And in fact, surrender is very different from resignation. To resign from something, to remove, to not participate in something. True surrender is actually a very active process. It takes a lot of awareness, a lot of application, and certain intensity of conscious devotion to seeing it through all the way in terms of surrendering to our negative emotions. And that's what I mean by surrender, is how we relate to negative emotions. There are many ways that we typically relate to negative emotions. The common ways often is when we have a negative emotion, we might distract ourselves, which so instead of feeling this, having this emotion come up, I'm going to distract myself. And I want to put a caveat today about that as we discuss this topic of surrendering to our inner negative emotions. It's sometimes when we've had, difficult childhood experiences, or we've had traumas in our life, um, negative emotions can come up at different circumstances and different situations, and they can be so intense that at times some distraction can be useful. So I'm not here to say that distraction from negative emotions is always a bad thing. It can have its role. And when we're going to go in the context of surrendering to negative emotions, sometimes when it gets too much, we can sort of return to distraction and then eventually come back to processing the emotions through surrender with smaller doses at a time, if you will. So that's more the rare exceptions, though, where we're sort of flooded by intense negative emotion and it's a little too much to take in all at once. And therefore, distraction can be a good method to sort of navigate that internal space when it's a little overwhelming. The other method is simple old fashioned suppression, just kind of like just not look at it and push it away. And like, we're going to just toughen up. And I'm not feeling that right now. I don't want to feel it. And I'm just going to suppress it. And again, sometimes there's certain situations, maybe there's a lot going on and it's not the right time to process emotions fully, and a little suppression in order to carry on in the day when there's certain tough circumstances to navigate might not be a bad thing. So again, even suppression to a certain degree may have its moments when it's appropriate and useful. But the difficulty is with both distraction and suppression of negative emotions is that they inevitably will return. They inevitably will return to the surface one way or another. So we haven't really truly transcended those negative emotions. We haven't moved past them in a true sort of lasting way where our well-being truly elevates, because that negative emotion doesn't come back either as often or it doesn't come back as intensely because we've processed it truly and we've actually let it move through our system. And then obviously the other way we tend to use to deal with our negative emotions is to try to think our way out of it, to reason, to even some techniques that are relatively appropriate, like to try to think differently about it. I'm going to think about this negative emotion is bringing up negative thoughts. So I'm going to try to bring positive thoughts to impact this negative emotion, try to make it a bit more positive. And that's a form of cognitive behavioral therapy, which can be quite effective in certain circumstances. But this is we could always call it a radical approach. It's so simple and that, but it can be challenging to navigate. But I would say by far, the most efficient way to deal with negative emotions. And basically, and I reviewed this a little bit in the early episodes on self-compassion, to become aware and mindful of our negative emotions as a form of self-compassion. This is really very similar, but really taken all the way through, taken to the very deep intensity of really feeling our negative emotions. So obviously I would recommend in general to practice with sort of the not the most intense negative emotions. But what happens typically when we start to really go through this process of truly feeling our negative emotions fully is that they come through, they process, eventually they go away, or they dissolve, I think is a better word. They evaporate, they dissolve when they've truly been processed. But we're a little bit like onions, we have multiple layers. We have negative emotions we don't even know about. And so sometimes we've processed one and like we feel lighter, we feel better. And then like, well, gosh darn it, there's another one that's come up. It's like, what the heck? Thought I got over it. Now there's another one. And then and you surrender and feel this one. And then the next one comes up. And it's like, okay. But ultimately, this is a good thing because you're removing layers, and each layer that is evaporated or dissolved makes you overall much lighter. Or there's less of a burden to carry because you're, embedded in your system are less negative emotions, a lower volume of negative emotions, if you will, embedded in your system. So this is overall a good process, but that's sometimes the surprise when we start to truly go through this process. Is this is not a one and done kind of thing. Usually we've gone through one and it passes like, I feel light, this is good, this is great, I feel empowered, I've moved through this. And then there's another one that comes up. You're like, oh, I didn't see that one coming. And then we go through that one. You're like, oh, there's another one. And that one seems really to get me deep down, So layers will come up to the surface as we process more and more. But this is a healthy process. This is about being more lighthearted and truly, truly moving past some of our negative emotions that, again, don't belong to us in the typical sense that we own them. It's a me thing. It's a human thing. It's part of your own, yes, some of it's part of your own personal history. Some of it's part of your cultural history, family history. There are all sorts of reasons why we carry negative emotions in our system that can, burden our hearts and not allow us to fully flourish in our well-being and produce suffering. But it's not a me thing, it's a human thing. It's not a you thing, it's a human thing. But nevertheless, it is a very personal work, a very personal sort of job to truly work through our negative emotions. There's a reason why we call it working through it, because it does take a certain intensity, a certain application to truly do this properly. And so, very simply put, negative emotions, when they come up, to truly surrender to them is basically whatever's happening up here. Because when we get negative emotions, we tend to ruminate a lot. We tend to have a lot of thinking. And we tend to have stories of why the negative emotions are happening, or how we're going to deal with them, or what can we do, or there's all sorts of stories happening. And the basic premise is to completely ignore the head. The head at this point is irrelevant. You're bypassing the cognitive process and going right into the emotion. And then it's about feeling the emotion completely, feeling it utterly, completely. And the kicker is to not wish it away, to not resist it. There's that saying, what you resist persists. This is a similar example. When you're having a negative emotion, to fully feel it and watch very carefully for your own resistance. The part of you that's, okay, I get it. I've surrendered to my negative emotions, but when's it going to go away now? This isn't working. This isn't working. And that subtle resistance has to be also kind of let go, surrendered, and to fully, fully feel it, and to offer it unconditional acceptance, which is really tricky to do. And it can be so uncomfortable because sometimes people have repressed or distracted themselves from negative emotions for decades, entire lifetimes. And all of a sudden it's like, it's right there and it's so uncomfortable. It's so uncomfortable, this negative emotion. But that is the process, because once somebody can experience truly surrendering to that negative emotion, to really feel it fully, feel it, don't push it away, don't wish it away, accept, like we've talked about this in other podcasts, it's almost see like a child that needs to be nurtured and loved no matter what. And it's just there and it's uncomfortable and you just like, oh, you just feel it, and then watch. It's like, okay, I've been feeling it for like 20 minutes and it's still here. When's this surrender technique gonna work? It's like, okay, well, we've fallen a little off the track. We got to get back on and just keep feeling it and almost appreciating that. Thank you for teaching me about myself. Like, thank you. Like feeling it, feeling it, feeling it. And you're in those moments when it's like right there and you're not wishing it away anymore, but it's really kind of still intense. You're really processing that emotion. You're feeling it fully, completely, and you're surrendering to that negative emotion, truly surrendering to it. And then to the point where eventually it starts to truly dissolve and dissipate and evaporate away. And not because you've repressed it, not because you've distracted, but because you've truly processed it, and it can kind of just sort of move on and go into the air and just let the earth and the universe take it, do its thing, and it just goes away. And at that point, it can be a very empowering experience. Like, okay, like I just really navigated a negative emotion, not by distraction or suppression, but by truly feeling it, feeling it, feeling it. And then it's very tricky because we're so used to being in our heads that even when you're feeling it, the mind's racing and the mind wants you to do this and the mind wants you to process that. And this is the reason you're feeling negative and this is what you can do about it. And da, 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 da. It doesn't, so it's like you can get pulled back up there. And that's okay. That's going to happen. But we come back to the emotion. It can be in the stomach, in the chest. Sometimes we even have it, some headaches sometimes, or in the back. But, typically it's in the chest, and we just feel it and feel it and feel it and feel it and ignore to the best of our abilities what's going on up here. So it's really bypassing the cognitive mental process and completely feeling it. And the key thing is to not wish it away and to be very keen to notice any part of us that's really kind of wanting to push it and wish it away. And I want to share this today because it is a very efficient way to process negative emotions. And when you can go through a certain degree of negative emotions and then it goes like, and it's like, okay, I can navigate this negative space. When the next one comes, it'll be okay. I can just do this again. So surrender is a very powerful process, to surrender resistance, to surrender any opposition to the negative emotion and fully accept it, to feel it. Just, you're completely feeling it. And it's getting that attention. It's like the negative emotion is a little bit like a neglected child, if you will. It's getting all that attention that it never got. It never was held and loved and just nurtured. And in order for it to let go of you, it just needs to feel loved and nurtured, and then it will let go of you when it's ready. But you don't decide when it lets go of you. And if you try to push it away before it's ready, then it'll just cling on harder because it's afraid, it's not ready, it hasn't been loved enough to carry on in its own journey on its own. Again, figuratively, of course, I'm being metaphorical, or this is just a way of talking about it. But really surrendering, the pathway of surrender, whenever there's a negative emotion, to be with it, to feel it, to just not resist it and truly embrace it. It allows a layer of negative emotions to dissolve and move on from your system, and allows you to be lighter, experience more well-being, have less suffering. And sure enough, and I very much am trying to keep improving my ability to surrender. This is a lifelong journey. And yes, when I've pulled certain layers that have moved on, other ones come up. So I certainly have my work cut out for me. But I will tell that this can be also a very rewarding process, a very empowering process to go about it differently. We're not going to think our way out of the negative emotions. We're going to feel fully. Ignore whatever's up here. Just feel and feel and feel and feel. Don't distract. Unless, obviously, there are times it can be overwhelming and we need to distract a little bit, suppress a little bit. That's okay too. But when it's a manageable degree or a manageable intensity of negative emotion, to just feel it, feel it, feel it. Don't wish it away. Hold it like a child. Feel it, love it, be with it. It can be there as long as it wants. You can, and even telling that it's okay, you can hang out, you can be there. Be like sometimes talking to it, a bit weird, I guess, a little funny, but it can be a way to just encourage yourself to really truly surrender and fully embrace the pathway of surrender. So just something to think about, folks, something to consider in your own journeys to well-being. I appreciate you all, and I hope you have a lovely day. We'll see you next time.